Continue our conversation about the investigation into the attempted bombing in Times Square last night. Congressman Peter King is a Republican of New York. He's a ranking Republican member on the House Homeland Security Committee and also serves on the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman, simple question off the top. What is the latest on this investigation as you know it?
From what I know, it's being heavily investigated. Obviously, the fertilizer is being examined very carefully. They do believe it's a person in the tri-state area, but other than that, this is going to be an NYPD Joint Terrorism Task Force investigation. There are obviously a lot of leads as far as fingerprints, as far as the identification number of the vehicle. So there's any number of leads they have, or at least bits of evidence they have. But my understanding is they've not zeroed in on anyone in particular, even though they may have one person in mind, but there's nothing definite yet.
Are you hearing that by most police and law enforcement authorities think at the moment this is a homegrown incident, though, not an international incident of any kind?
My understanding is, from talking to people at the international level, that there was no international chatter, there was no indication at all from overseas that something was going to happen. So whether or not this is al-Qaeda linked or not, it would be homegrown. In other words, even if it is al-Qaeda, it appears to be a homegrown incident, if it is al-Qaeda.
Earlier today, you raised some eyebrows when you were trying to figure out who might be responsible for this, and you were being careful in saying might, but you did say one possibility, and again, this is one possibility. Close to the Viacom building, you were saying that the outrage at one of the South Park incidents not that long ago. Was that perhaps getting out a little ahead of yourself?
No, not really, because I know that it is being looked at by investigators as one of the possibilities. I was going down a list of possibilities, and that is one of them, to show again, how many things that the police and the Joint Terrorism Task Force have to look at, and that is one of them. But that basically is, all I know is that they themselves, the police, thought it was something that should be looked into. It is being looked into, along with any number of other scenarios.
What's your sense from everything you've heard here? Every city, but especially New York City, reconfigured just about everything it does after 9/11. Times Square, one of the biggest targets if you're trying to make a statement, whether it's homegrown, whether it's a solo act, or whether it's an international organization. What's your sense of what you've seen in the last 24 hours about, A, how this was handled, and B, is the city, does it have everything it needs? Is it doing everything it needs to do, or is something need to be tweaked?
Well, the NYPD handled it perfectly. They could have not done better, starting with the tip they got, going right through as far as evacuating, as far as disabling the bomb. All that was done absolutely perfectly. What we do know, though, is that New York is the #1 target in the world, and we do definitely need more Homeland Security funding to get the job done. In particular, the President has zeroed out all the money this year for radiation detection in New York, and we believe that the next attack on Manhattan will come from the outer boroughs or from the suburbs by a vehicle. That is the most likely, and the real concern will be a dirty bomb. So last night we saw part of that. We saw a vehicle which seems to have been brought from the outside Manhattan into Manhattan, and it did contain a bomb. It was not a radioactive device, but it could have been. So I would say that the main thing we need right now is to make sure that New York City, Long Island region get their fair share of Homeland Security funding, and specifically that the Secure the Cities, which is the radiation detection program, be continued by the President and not zeroed out the way he's done it in this year's budget.
Congressman Peter King, Republican of New York, we appreciate your time tonight, and we will keep in touch in the hours and days ahead. Thank you, sir. And among our many reporters covering the story is our Mary Snow, who was right there on the ground in Times Square. Let's check in with Mary for the latest. Hi, Mary.
Hi there, John. I want to set the scene for you. What you see behind me is a pedestrian mall in Times Square, what Mayor Bloomberg calls the crossroads of the world, because you walk into that crowd, you'll find people from all over the world. And we're just about 2 blocks away from where that vehicle was found last night. And as you can see, it has been business as usual. There are about 35 theaters in this district. Many of them do not have Sunday night programs, shows that is, but they do have matinees, and all those matinees went on as scheduled. Last night among theaters, there were some that had delayed openings, but all did go on. You might hear there are some sirens in the background, the crowds in the background. A lot of the tourists here, I talked to people from all over, Australia, Germany, Canada today. They say, unfortunately, this is the new norm. Yes, they were concerned about what happened last night, but they would not be deterred, and they wanted to go on as normal. And one New Yorker I ran into said she was surprised to see so many tourists out here and was so relieved for that T-shirt vendor who first alerted police when he saw smoke coming out of that car.
It is a remarkable night in a remarkable place. Mary Snow with the latest for us. We'll keep in touch with Mary as well. We'll be right back in just a minute. You're watching a 2-hour special edition of Larry King Live. Don't go anywhere. Among our guests when we return, Susan Candiotti with new information on the investigation.